Okay, let us begin. Good morning, everybody. My name is K. Matthew Dames. I am the resident librarian at Georgetown University Law Library. My badge is going to say Kevin. That's my informal name. Please call me that throughout the conference. This is room 3043 at the 2003 Conference on Law School Computing, sponsored by CALI. Welcome, everybody. It's hot, it's humid, but we should have a very good time. We're here to talk today about e-learning. The session is entitled, Why Legal Education Must Adopt E-Learning, or e-learning at lawschool.edu. What I'm looking to do today is to give you a glimpse of some of the things that I have been researching and studied and been studying over the last year or so. I've got a pretty interesting background, so people say. I come to this e-learning presentation and this e-learning field as a believer. Part of the reason I do believe in the power of it is because as a student at Syracuse University School of Information Studies, and we have a fellow alumnus here as well, I did their MLS program through distance learning. The program was about 85 to 90% distance learning. We had 1 week residencies at the beginning of the semester, but for the most part it was distance education, distance learning, distributed learning, as we'll define it later on. And quite frankly, it was probably the best educational experience of all the educational experiences that I've had. So, this is where we're going today, sort of an overview of what we're going to do, sort of the pit stops, if you will. We're going to define what e-learning is. We're going to look at some of the developments in legal education. We're going to look at some new directions and some trends that I think are going to define where this field goes in legal education over the next 3 to 5 years. First pit stop is defining e-learning. One of the reasons why I think it's important to define what e-learning is because there are a lot of terms in this particular field that we bandy about, and some of them are synonymous, some of them sort of are very confusing. And so what I want to do is set the tone with my own definition of what e-learning is and then compare it with distance education. I think that's particularly important for this crowd because the American Bar Association, the accreditation agency for the law schools, has focused solely on distance education, and I think that's a mistake. So what is e-learning? This is the definition that I've come up with. The strategic, purposeful, and practical use of technology to enhance teaching, learning, or scholarship. This definition has, as I see it, 3 important elements or components. The first one is using technology in a strategic way. What do we mean by that? We mean using technology in a way that's applied skillfully after careful planning and consideration. We don't want to jump into this haphazardly by any stretch of the imagination. We want to plan for it. We want to consider it. We want to see where this sort of fits in. We also want to see where it doesn't fit in, which I think is as important as finding out where it does fit in. Second element is the purposeful use of technology. By that, what we mean is that the technology is applied with a definite aim and only after we have set out clear objectives. One of the things that I've noticed in dealing with the e-learning space is that unlike what a lot of us do as instructors, when you set out to do an e-learning venture or a distance learning venture, one of the things that you want to do is find out where you're going to go first. You want to start with the end in mind first and then work backwards. The planning for e-learning can be very lengthy. It can be up to a year for a single course. And I think that what ends up happening is you're better off looking at the end goal and then working back towards where you are. Third important element deals with practicality. What do we mean by practicality? We want to use technology in a way that makes sense to all groups that may be affected by it. So obviously that includes teachers and students. It also includes the IT staff. One of the groups that often gets overlooked in this process is the library. And a little bit later on, I'll have a couple of comments about the library and its role in this particular endeavor. At the bottom line, what we're looking to do is use the technology to focus on education and learning. That's really what it's all about. If we can't use technology in a way that enhances learning, teaching, or scholarship, then quite frankly, we shouldn't use it. I had mentioned a little while ago something about distance education, and I think it's important to sort of distinguish distance education from e-learning, which we'll do now. Distance education is something that we are all sort of concerned with, particularly since, okay. So much for technology. Can you still hear me in the back? Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way, distance education is important because the American Bar Association has spent most of its time dealing with technology and education from a distance education standpoint. And this is the way that I sort of distinguish distance education from e-learning. For distance education, and I'll define this as an instructional arrangement in which the teacher and the learner are geographically separated to an extent that requires communication through media. The key thing in distance education is that the technology is used in a way so that it has to replicate the classroom. Because it has to replicate the classroom, we spend a lot of time talking about delivery issues, how to get stuff from A to B, how the students are going to submit assignments, when are they going to submit assignments, how are we going to post things to the courseware, so on and so forth. When we focus our energies on those things, what we're really focusing on is the technology. We're not really focusing on how to best deliver it in a way so that the students can understand lessons better. With e-learning, what we want to do is we want to focus on the learning. So to look at the graph that you're looking at now, to contrast the two, in distance education we have geographic separation. E-learning, and this is very important, e-learning can be used either in the distance education field or in a classroom. For example, this right here can be a very strong e-learning environment. We've got people who are here for pretty much the same reason with the very similar interests who are sort of convening, working together, taking pictures of the very nice room that we're in, looking to get some ideas on how best to improve what they do for their students. We've got the audio-visual aspects. We've got me with the broken microphone. We've got the projector. And so this sort of all creates what I'll call a community of practice, and that's something that I'll return to later on. At the end of the day, the most important thing, the most important contrast between the two is that, in my view, distance education focuses a little bit too much on delivery and technology, while e-learning, because it can happen in the classroom and can extend the classroom, focuses on the learning aspects of it. How do you deliver e-learning initiatives? We have 10 different ways to deliver these things. I'm sure this is not a comprehensive list. A couple of comments about a few of these points. I think the last two, video and audio, and I'm talking from an analog standpoint, those are two things that sort of get short shrift. We don't talk about video and straight audio in an analog format much anymore because we're talking about the World Wide Web and courseware and a lot of the initiatives there. I think video and audio still remains some of the most powerful ways to deliver lessons and to sort of enhance the learning experience. The World Wide Web, of course, has changed a lot of what we do and how we do it. Courseware is a big issue. Here in e-learning, there are two major platforms, Blackboard and WebCT. I admit that I sort of prefer WebCT because that's what my experience is on. We use WebCT at Syracuse. I'll be teaching on WebCT this summer for a copyright course also at Syracuse. The main difference is that the WebCT platform is a little bit more technologically advanced than Blackboard, so that if you have the support staff, you can do a little bit higher level of customization than with Blackboard. When we're talking about courseware in the legal education market, we've got the two major vendors, of course, that each have their own products. West has the West Education Network. Blackboard, LexisNexis has web courses. TWEN, as the West product is abbreviated, that product is something that's homegrown by West. The web courses product by Lexis is done on the Blackboard platform. Both vendors have programs on the agenda, I believe, today, but certainly in this conference. So I'll let them sell you on the positives, and well, they probably won't tell you anything negative, but I'll let them sell you on how great their respective products are. I want to talk 1 minute or so about PDA use, personal digital assistants. I just had an interesting conversation with a gentleman over here from Hastings about the PDA use in legal education and amongst lawyers. What I have found, Georgetown also has a medical school, and Brian Boston is the instructional technologist over for the medical school. And some of the things that they're doing with PDAs in medical school are incredible. Not only are they using them for reference sort of applications, but they're also doing, dosing applications, patient diagnostic applications. And quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that PDA applications haven't caught on quicker in legal education and amongst lawyers, particularly because it's a very good platform for reference applications. If you go to a website named handango.com, they've got a list of legal applications, and I think you can do downloads for things like the Federal Rules of Evidence and the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and those things can be, I think, very powerful tools. I personally am waiting for West to come out with a PDA-enabled version of the Black's Law Dictionary. It certainly would fit. I don't know why they haven't done it, but I think the first thing that we're going to see in terms of PDA use in the legal market is probably going to be for reference products. Next stop on our e-learning journey is what's going on in legal education, both historically and right now, and I'm just going to pick sort of milestone points along what I think is a 30-year continuum of e-learning and legal education. It starts with, in 1972, with the advent of the Lexis database. 4 years later, in '76, we had Westlaw come out, and our sponsors, the Center for Computer-Assisted Legal Instruction, that organization was formed in 1982. Going further along the continuum, the Legal Information Institute at Cornell was established in 1992, and looking at sort of the e-learning timeline, 1992 is a watershed year because that was around the time that the web came out of academia and became popularly available to the public. Moving along the continuum, go to 1996, FindLaw was launched, and 2002 was a very big year for e-learning, and I think when we get a couple years out, we'll find that this was sort of the big year for some of the initiatives. We'll take the first one. Duke and Georgetown law professors teach with a DVD-ROM casebook. I think some of you have already heard about the contracts experience, but I'll summarize that. That's a collaboration between 2 Duke law professors and a Georgetown law professor. They have created a contracts casebook, electronic casebook, that's delivered on DVD-ROM. They've got the traditional things like the cases and the secondary materials, statutory stuff like the UCC and the restatement. But they also have a ton of video. They've got video reenactments that sort of help to illustrate some of the thornier problems in contract law. They also have a number of lawyers, judges, and law professors talking about doctrinal issues on this particular project. The project was funded by a grant. The total grants came out to about $3 million, and it seems like every last cent of that is in the DVD. Jerry Spann is the professor at Georgetown that's doing it. Here at Duke, it's John Wiestart and H. Jefferson Powell. When I spoke to Chris McLaughlin, who's here at Duke and the associate producer of the Contracts Experience, he said a couple of months ago that they were looking to commercialize this product, and they were trying to do it effective for the coming school year, the 2003-2004 school year. I haven't seen Chris at the conference today, but if he is around, I'll ask him again, and I'll see what's going on with that. Ken Hirsch may also know, and I know Ken is at the conference, this year's conference. Second big thing is dealing with the Concord University School of Law out in California. November 21st, 2002, they graduated their first class of JD students. It was a class of 10. Concord is sort of billed as the online law school, but I think that if you look at what they do and how they do it, it's a little bit more than that. We're going to talk about blended learning and distributed learning, which is sort of a mix between the in-class and the distance, using technologies in both environments. And Concord really is starting to move toward the blended environment. They have a collaboration with William Mitchell in Minnesota, which allows Concord students to take trial advocacy courses. I think they can also send in the trial advocacy. They can also sit in the trial advocacy clinic that takes place during the summer in Minneapolis. Interestingly, I think as everybody knows, Concord is not yet accredited by the American Bar Association. Don't know if it ever will be, primarily because they don't plan to build a physical library, and that's one of the things that you have to get ABA accreditation. What they do seems to be working, though. As I said, 10 students graduated in November. All 10 sat for the California Bar in February of 2003. 6 of them passed. I've heard that the California Bar exam is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult bar exam in the country. So if you're coming out of the box with 6 out of 10 pass rate first time around, that's not bad at all. We'll talk a little bit more about Concord and what it does and how it does it a little bit later. I want to move on to the American Bar Association and its guidelines. In August of 2002, they revised their guidelines, the temporary guidelines on distance education, and passed permanent guidelines on distance education, and we'll look at the permanent guidelines right now. Permanent guidelines were issued in 1997, and basically what they were supposed to do was allow people to get a head start into experimenting with distance education in the legal arena. It was really what I call distance education light. It was sort of laden with a lot of conditions. One of the conditions was that the students can only take one distance education course. The second condition was that the student had to be on campus in a classroom taking the course, which sort of defeats the purpose of doing distance education in the first place. Be that as it may, this was all sort of, these restrictions or conditions were passed in order to comply with former standard 304G, the language of which is on the screen. a law school will not grant credit for study by correspondence, and they felt that the studying from home in the office basically equated to correspondence study. There was one pretty significant initiative under these guidelines. Peter Martin and the Legal Information Institute at Cornell offered Social Security law classes and copyright law classes from Cornell. They delivered the classes through courseware and streaming media. 7 schools were involved. Those schools were Arizona State, Chicago, Kent, Kansas, Rutgers at Camden, New Jersey, Rutgers at Newark, New Jersey, Seattle, and Vermont. Cornell handled the sort of instructional and delivery aspects, and the respective schools handled things like administration, grading, so on and so forth. To my knowledge, and hopefully we can sort of expound upon this in the Q&A, this was the only significant venture under these temporary guidelines, which sort of begs the question, were the guidelines too restrictive, or were legal educators sort of resistant to the idea? We go from 97 to August of 2002, where the new guidelines were passed. The new guidelines are listed here. Basically, to summarize them, that allows up to 12 credits of distance education. It basically equates to 1 class per semester in a student's second and third year, assuming that it's a 3-year full-time program. No distance education classes during the 1L year, which I think is reasonable and understandable. The resident being in the classroom is not required so long as there is, quote, ample interaction between the student and the teacher monitors student effort and accomplishment. Those terms are very broad. I think they were written broadly on purpose. So that means teachers can't really check out for certain times, but it allows them to sort of monitor from abroad. And what I think we'll find is that as teachers, faculty members sort of remove themselves from the equation of teaching, a lot of teaching amongst students and between students can happen, and that will help the learning process. Important to remember, one thing that's very important to remember about these guidelines is that they only apply to Juris Doctor programs. So if your school has an LLM program, an SJD program, another graduate law program, or you have certificate programs, you are free to do what you will. And there are some schools that have already started to do some very interesting things with distance education for their graduate law programs. To my knowledge right now, Concord has an LLM program that's distance. Nova Southeastern has a program that's distance. Regent University has a program that's distance. These are all graduate programs. And also, I think St. Thomas University, which is also in Florida, they all have LLM programs offered through the distance education format. Taxation seems to be a very popular subject to offer these courses in, and I think we'll see more. One of the things that's going to be very interesting to see is whether schools offer these distance education programs on the graduate or certificate level and then take the lessons that they've learned from those programs to implement back into their JD programs. One of the things that I'd like to find out during the Q&A, and I'll ask this, is if anybody is doing anything right now on the JD level in the distance education format. Obviously, if the guidelines just got passed in August of 2002, the recently concluded school year was a little bit too soon, so we should start to see something happening in this field this year, maybe next year. And again, it takes about, I think, as much as a year to develop these things, a 3-credit course, soup to nuts, in a blended or distance atmosphere. There are pros and cons to these guidelines. People have a lot of different opinions of them. I have my opinions about them, and I think that they missed the mark for a couple of reasons. Well, 3 to be exact. First of all, I think, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, that the ABA guidelines sort of focus a little bit more on technology and the delivery end of things than actual instruction. For some reason, and I don't know why this is so, the ABA decided to limit their discussion of technology and education to distance education. What that effectively means, though, is that things like the contracts experience, the DVD casebook, don't get discussed, how to use that in a classroom environment. For example, there are some contracts professors at Georgetown who don't use most of the casebook in their classes. They use a traditional casebook in their classes, but they expand upon the casebook with the video portions of the DVD-ROM. Under the guidelines that the ABA has passed, we don't get into those sorts of discussions of how to use that sort of technology in the classroom. Second thing I don't like about the guidelines are that they don't discuss distributed learning at all. What do we mean by distributed learning? And distributed learning and blended learning are sort of used interchangeably and synonymously throughout this presentation, and you can use them synonymously as such. To define what it is, it's basically using a wide range of technologies to provide learning opportunities beyond the bounds of the traditional classroom. If you go back a couple of slides, I think it was slide 6, we looked at the different ways you can deliver e-learning initiatives to students. The benefit of using multiple formats, multiple delivery formats at one time is that it's probably, you can hit students sort of where they live. If somebody is an auditory learner like myself, you can provide audio-visual, an audio feed to them that they can learn. If they learn well in the classroom setting like this, in a lecture hall, you can hit them in that way. If they learn with video reenactments, you can hit them that way. And what basically happens there is that the learning becomes a little bit more interactive. When it becomes more interactive, more students participate, and they participate with each other, and they can start to mentor each other. And what happens is that you build on what's called a community of practice, which is the third thing that I don't like about the guidelines, is that they don't mention communities of practice. What is a community of practice? It is a group of people who interact, learn together, build relationships, and in the process develop a sense of belonging and mutual commitment. Members use each other as sounding boards, build on each other's ideas, and provide a filtering mechanism to deal with knowledge overload. Basically, what you're talking about is a learning incubator. Paul DeGuid, who is scheduled to speak tomorrow, I believe, at the plenary session, wrote a paper called The Social Life of Legal Information. It is available online from the online peer-reviewed journal called First Monday. Paul, in that article, talks a lot about communities of practice and how they apply to e-learning, and I'm sure he'll talk about that tomorrow. If you've got a chance to pull it off today, I would go to firstmonday.com and pull down that article. It's a very good article, and I'm sure he'll be talking about that tomorrow in the plenary session. Is it just me, or is it just hot in here? Okay, all right. Next stop on the e-learning tour is sort of where we're going. And to sort of find out where we're going in legal education, we're going to first address the question that's inherent in the title of this particular presentation: why legal educators must adopt e-learning. I can list 4 more reasons other than the 3 that are listed here, but we'll stay with these 3. These are the reasons why I think e-learning is necessary and essential in the legal education endeavor. First of all, it's going to prepare students to practice. ABA Standard 301A says that law schools, the primary purpose of law schools are to, and I quote, to prepare its graduates for admission to the bar and to participate effectively and responsibly in the legal profession. Participate effectively and responsibly in the legal profession. In order to participate effectively and responsibly in the legal profession, I would submit that you have to know a lot more about technology today than you used to have to know 20 years ago. Let's take an example of that. Let's talk about how technology is being used and applied in the courtroom. We have a program in today's, I think it's somewhere on the program, we have a presentation by Ken Hirsch about their Duke's new courtroom and what they're doing with that. We also have things like the Legal Technology Institute at the University of Florida, who's looking at how technologies are being used in the courtroom. If you want to look at how technology and the use of technology can be used effectively in the courtroom, you don't really need to go much further than the O.J. Simpson murder trial. One of the things that the defense team was able to do extremely well was to put together models, virtual models, examples that lay people could easily understand. And one of how they were doing that was through technology-driven methods. It didn't come down just to the glove not fitting, despite what Johnny Cochran said. They had a lot of razzle-dazzle going on. Some of it, you could argue, was to sort of obfuscate the issue. But be that as it may, that team used technology, particularly the DNA portions of their presentation, extremely well. And so in order to get the triers of fact to sort of understand where you're going, particularly with all the technology that's going on in science and in business nowadays, you're going to have to be able to hit people in a way that they understand the information. And the fact of the matter is that for most people, people understand visually. So in order to develop things visually, you're going to have to use technology to simplify the most complex portions of your case. So that's one of the things that I think, one of the reasons why I think it's very important that we implement e-learning initiatives now in the classroom. Second reason why we have to do it is that the students are going to expect it. Students nowadays that are going to primary school, secondary school, college, have been using computers in their learning endeavors since they were little kids. I think it's ridiculous to think that they're going to sort of throw away the fact that they have been using that stuff all their lives once they get to law school. I had a whole raft of statistics that showed, what kids are doing and the computer use that they're implementing at the lower educational levels, and I decided to throw all of that out Monday based upon an email that I received from somebody that I don't know. Give you the background on the story just quickly. There is a magazine called The National Jurist. It is targeted towards law students. It's distributed, I assume, on most of the law school campuses in the United States. The National Jurist, a couple of years ago, published a ranking called the Most Wired Law Schools. So now law schools are being ranked on the basis of the technology they use, not only for administrative functions, but also for pedagogical functions. And just as an aside, I think it's just a matter of time before U.S. News and World Report picks that up and runs with it. Be that as it may, I put out a message on a listserv to get a print copy of the article. A man in, I think it's Louisiana, emailed me Monday, said, I saw this listserv posting on LLSDC, or a couple of different places where I put it, and I wanted to know if you could fax me a copy of the article, because my son, who is a junior at the University of Alabama, who is a technoid and running a 3.8 GPA, is interested in going to law school, and one of the ways in which he is going to decide where he goes to law school is is based upon the level of technology that the school offers him. So now what's going to happen is that students are going to begin to decide where to go based upon the level of technology that you offer them, not just for, again, administrative purposes, but also in the classroom. I thought that was extremely interesting. Just as an aside, this is not up here, but I think you're going to see this sort of trend extend to faculty as well. With the new waves of faculty that are coming in, people that are our age and younger, a little older, who are really very, very well versed in technology issues. They study it. That new faculty member is going to want to have those trinkets and toys. He or she is going to want to teach with them. They're going to want to have 24-hour access to the network when they're in Belize in July or wherever they go during the summer. So I think you'll see competition amongst even faculty members who, when they have to make a decision where they're going to go, they're going to say, well, I'm going to go here as opposed to here because they can support my technological needs in the classroom and outside the classroom better than another school can. The third reason I think it's necessary to do these things is something that we've talked about throughout, is that it allows for technology in the classroom when implemented well, and we're only interested in doing it well, quite frankly. It allows for a richer learning experience. It allows the students to engage in their own learning. And basically what happens is that when students can learn on their own and learn and teach and learn from each other, we get back to sort of apprenticeship and mentorship, and those are the oldest and probably the most effective ways to learn. What are the hurdles in getting to this point? The first one we've talked about, and I don't mean to just, beat the ABA over the head with a blunt object, but the ABA is a hurdle. And it's a hurdle because traditionally the American Bar Association has been very resistant towards new models of instruction. There's going to be a time where this situation, somebody standing at the front of the room talking to a classroom full of students, is just not going to work. I think there's a place for it, and I don't say throw it out. I'm not saying throw out all of legal education for the last 200 years that the law teachers have been teaching. But we need to do something more. We need to present information in a little bit different way. The ABA traditionally has been resistant to sort of the new models. Some of the things, I think you're seeing a lot of resistance to the Concord model, for example. I hope that as years sort of pass on, that resistance will become lower and lower. Second barrier that we're going to have to deal with is the issue of brand or reputation. And this is a really sticky one because reputation can be tied to the way and how much you get money from alumni, from institutions, the donations that you get from the computer manufacturers who want to see their products in the most prestigious law schools based upon national rankings or regional rankings, so on and so forth. Law schools have a vested interest in their reputation. And when you have a vested interest in a particular reputation, you're going to be resistant and loath to do anything that could be seen as diminishing the value of that reputation. I would say that one of the audiences that's going to be most resistant to some of the things that educators want to do probably is going to be the alumni. Alumni say, well, when I was there in whenever, I walked 22 miles in the snow, and I sat through this, that, and the other thing, and it was horrible, but I got through it. And if you want me to continue giving to the alumni fund for the new building or this, that, and the other thing. I don't know if I can participate as much in the alumni giving program if you're going to do things like distance education. Quite frankly, I don't know how to get around that, because those are sort of very heavy, thorny political issues that you're going to have to deal with. But you are going to have to deal with alumni, faculty members, administration, and to some degree students even, who are going to schools not based upon the educational experience, but based upon the name that's going to be on the degree after they pay $150,000 worth of tuition. And so that change is going to have to come very carefully and very subtly. Attitude is also a barrier. What do I mean by attitude? There are about 185 accredited law schools in the nation. By my count, 95% of them are aligned with a larger university. For reasons that I can't quite explain, we isolate ourselves in a lot of ways from the larger university. We isolate ourselves administratively, financially, and also pedagogically. It's rare that you're going to have law professors or law school administrators say, hey, this political science professor on main campus is doing something very, very innovative with his or her class, and I would like to know how to implement that in what I'm doing. There's sort of an arrogance to legal educators that obviously we only know what's best for our students. We dare not look to the political science department or the psychology department or the math department to teach us how to better serve our students. We know what's best for our students. I think that is an unfortunate attitude that is going to have to change for a couple of reasons. A, because quite frankly, the main campuses more often than not are ahead of the legal educators in sort of implementing these measures, and if they've already done it and they've done it well and they've already made the mistakes, why are you going to try to invent the wheel from scratch? That also goes to the money issue. Money is, this stuff costs a lot of money, and despite sort of the opinion that all of this stuff is going to go towards technology, actually 80% of your cost in implementing these initiatives is not going to be towards technology and equipment. It's going to be towards labor. It's going to be towards hiring people who know how to work in a couple of different fields and can present these things to you in a way that is cost efficient and at the same time fulfills your educational mission as an institution. What do I see happening in the next 3 to 5 years? A couple of trends to look at. I think this first one, going beyond the law, sort of goes to attitude. I think at some point we're going to make a choice to look at what's happening on the main campus and what they're doing, and also look at what's happening at the library. The library usually does not get discussed in these initiatives, and that's rather unfortunate because the library, from a legal education standpoint, usually is much further along that technology and education curve than the law school is. And I think that the librarians, since they sort of specialize in how to use information, and they've been implementing the technological end of information use and delivery since, with the OPACs and the WebPACs, so on and so forth. I think that we're going to go beyond a law, not just to the main campuses, but also to the main campus library and also the law library. I think we're also going to see a second trend moving towards the distributed and blended learning model. One of the things that I liked about my experience at Syracuse was that at that beginning for 4 days or however many days we met, we were in class for 8 hours a day. We got to sort of learn about each other, get comfortable with each other, get comfortable with the professor and the instructor, and that sort of bond, that comfort level usually lasted throughout the 12 weeks of the course. I don't think that the fully distanced model is going to work because, again, we get caught up in the technological conundrum. We get caught up in talking about delivery and how are things going to work as opposed to the best way of learning. So I think the models that we're going to see are a blended or distributed model where we use the classroom, we use technology to extend the classroom, and then we use some of our time and effort to do stuff that's online, wherein the law professors remove themselves from the equation to a certain extent and let students sort of work within themselves and by themselves. The last trend I see is a shakeout. Now, shakeout has decidedly commercial overtones, and I put that in there for a reason. And this sort of goes towards the money barrier. This stuff costs a lot of money, and not everybody has a lot of money to spend, particularly now because you've got, alumni donations are probably down. Those of you who are in the state schools are almost assuredly facing budget crunches there. But at the same time, you're facing a situation where you're going to have to spend this money on a lot of different things in order to do this well. So when I say shakeout, what do I mean? I see a situation where it could be possible, not probable, but possible, that some of the schools that can't make this transition either close or at the very least combine or collaborate with other law schools in the region to sort of deliver these initiatives. When it comes to this sort of collaboration, this consortium model, again, law libraries, I think, provide a very good example of doing that. You've got things like NELCO up in Boston. They have put together a consortium of law schools to deal with the high price of buying electronic information, and I think that's very successful. I think you're going to see a situation at some point, though, where all but the most well-heeled law schools are going to have to face the money issue, and they're either going to have to collaborate with other schools or question whether or not they can continue to remain open. We get to the end of this presentation, which is good because I am sweating bullets up here. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did is that I am as interested in finding out what you're doing as I hope you are interested in this subject. I hope you found this particularly informative. I am sending the slides of this presentation to John, so the CALI organization will have them. Please feel free to contact me at this email address, elearning@kmatthewdames.com. I've put together an annotated bibliography of some of the stuff that I've been looking at, both online and paper sources on a lot of this stuff. I'd be glad to share it with you. And at this point, I would really like to open the floor up to questions, and thank you very much. Questions. If there are black dots on your desks, those are microphones, and Lori in the back is going to be turning those microphones on. So when somebody's asking a question, and I'll be sure to repeat the question, don't scratch on the microphone. To get this started, I'll ask the first question. Is there anybody here in the room who is developing a distance or blended education program for their JD program? Okay, we've got a couple of 1, 2, 3. Anybody want to talk about the experiences and where you are in the development process? Sure.
I'm at Cumberland Law School at Stanford University in Birmingham. And for the past several years, we've, on an experimental basis, been developing the courses. And you're right, it takes more than a year to even get a course up. We have courses now that are fully online.
Yeah.
This summer.
I think you're under that mic. That's okay. Somebody's on the mic. Okay. Go ahead.
We have this summer. We're fully online with 3 courses. One is a 2-hour course, 2 semester hours. The other 2 are 1 hour. So we're going slow. We don't have a 3-hour course yet, and they're all elective courses. The interesting thing that's a bit of a surprise, my colleague who's actually teaching these courses, who normally comes here, the response is so good. What we did this in summer school because our summer school enrollment has been lagging. And we have students who are clerking, and for various reasons they can't go to summer school, but they want to take courses. So the sign-up was unbelievable. We got 63 students signed up for these 3 courses.
Okay, and that's it.
He's so busy with these courses.
He couldn't come to the CALI conference. Interesting. That's at Sanford in Alabama, is it? Birmingham, Alabama. Okay. Anybody else want to talk about your experiences, sir?
Sure. I just finished the course.
What's your name and where are you from?
I'm from the University of New Mexico.
Okay.
And a colleague of mine named Rob Schwartz just finished a pure distance learning class in children's healthcare policy and practice.
Okay.
We taught 18 students, a variety of techniques, streaming video. We had about 3/4 of the classes, 3/4 of the weeks. We had chats, online chats. We did an online opening argument in a case. We did some streaming video. We did some discussion board stuff. We did 2 online examinations. We had a paper, a lot of email stuff. The response from the student, we had 18 students. The response was overwhelmingly positive to that experience. We never personally met the students as a class. They were all at the University of New Mexico, so they knew who we were. They could come find us in the office anytime they wanted to. And a few did, but not all. And we found that the learning community did develop among the students, and that they really, I think part of it was new chats and the weekly assignments that they got. So we teamed them to some extent. We forced them to get together, and they did it fairly consistently. There was a good learning community experience.
Great. There was a gentleman from Michigan. Yes, sir. State your name and you're from Michigan, University of Michigan.
Well, I'm Mitch Counts. I'm from Ave Maria School of Law in Ann Arbor. And we did a completely video conferencing course in commercial systems. We didn't have a professor to teach the course in the spring semester. So we had an individual who wrote one of the case books in commercial systems at Wayne State, which is in Detroit. And we decided to hook up with him. He had visited us the year before and taught at Ave Maria. So he had a knowledge of our students, and I helped write a grant, and we went with Polycom video conferencing equipment. So it was a complete two-way audio video experience for the students. We had about, I think, 12 or 14 students that participated in the program, and it was very very successful.
Okay. Is anybody doing anything with PDAs, either on the WinCE platform or on the Palm operating system platform? I see no hands. That's very interesting. I sort of thought that, and I alluded to this in the presentation, I sort of thought that PDA use would become much more prevalent in law schools and in legal practice, but for some reason it hasn't quite caught on. I downloaded this test version of this program called Documents to Go, which shows basically it's a translation program for most of the Microsoft Office suite, and it preserves the formatting so that you can see the stuff on your PDA. I've got a handspring visor, black and white, 8 megabytes. You know, it's nothing fancy. It's certainly not like a tungsten. Those palm tungstens are outrageous. But the resolution came out very well. Obviously, I mean, it's a very small screen, but the resolution of the image came out extremely well. And I think that for reference products, it seems to be perfect. I mean, if you can get a download of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Federal Rules of Evidence, Black's Law Dictionary, it sounds like it's a perfect application for the PDA, and I hope that we're going to see a situation where we see more PDA use further along. Anybody developing something that sort of lures the professors in, say like a virtual seating chart, anything like that, sir?
Yeah, doing an interactive seating chart with the students' pictures and names, and we're working on that to roll that out to the fall semester.
What's your name?
Sid Maestri. I'm with Santa Clara University.
Okay, and you're doing the virtual seating chart thing?
Yeah, actually, you were talking about different departments. Someone from the business department, faculty member, had developed a seating chart, and they showed it to the law school, and they loved it, but they were using student IDs with the pictures, and that was not allowed. No, there.
Okay.
Of the blind rating.
Right.
So we basically took that and re-engineered it and did our own version and took it to another level. So the faculty are going to be able to email students individually or email an entire class and keep a log and that sort of thing.
Oh, I think that's hot. I think that's hot. What are you? What platform are you running in terms of the database backend and stuff like that?
SQL Server and Cold Fusion.
Oh yeah. I get excited about that stuff. Have you thought about? I know you're developing it. Has anybody talked about sort of making it a little bit more interactive and mating it with Flash?
That was an original idea, but we did want to get it rolled out as soon as possible. I actually come from a background where I have Flash experience, so it is something we could potentially do where it would be drag and drop or have additional features that would be supported in MS.
Okay, and that's at Santa Clara, you said?
Santa Clara, yeah.
Okay. Questions?
I built it with SQL Server and Cold Fusion, so it was homegrown.
Yeah, SQL Server is being used as the database repository backend, and Cold Fusion is being used as the middleware. That's what I thought of doing. I don't have the full Cold Fusion skills or the Flash skills to do it myself, but I think that's great.
I should also add that we had originally built the database to build course schedules. All the class information was already there, all the faculty files and everything were already there. It was just a matter of adding that third component of connecting the students to the classroom in the database.
That's hot. That's hot. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Frank Liu from University Law School.
Okay. From where again?
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Law School. In the beginning, you mentioned about that you were going to talk a little bit about the role of the law library.
Yes.
Could you expand on that a bit?
Sure. Now, I'm biased because I'm a law librarian. But if you look at sort of law schools generally, and the use of information and the use of technology to deliver and present information, the law library really has been way ahead of the curve when it comes to the whole legal education endeavor. I mean, you've got the web pack. Obviously, we've got the LexisNexis portion of it. I know at Georgetown we do a lot of teaching and training, so we've got that education experience. And I think what happens is that, again, just as the professors don't want to go to main campus to sort of crib off of their notes. They seem to have a similar hesitance to go to the law library. And really, I mean, the law library and law librarians nowadays, I mean, in order to be an effective law librarian, your technological proficiency has to be, I mean, pretty strong in order to teach well, in order to present and deliver information in a way that's going to keep people interested. So I think that in that way, the law library and law librarians have a big role to play. I mean, you look at what they're doing here at Duke. Law librarians were sort of involved pretty heavily in the process of developing the Contracts Experience DVD. Main campus was involved pretty heavily in the Contracts Experience DVD, developing that particular product. And I think what's going to have to happen is that you're going to have more collaboration and to take advantage of the sort of expertise that you have in-house. And I would submit that the law library and law librarians have a lot of expertise to, if not deliver the entire solution, to deliver part of the solution and also to ask the right questions. So we are at 11:30. Lunch is calling. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.